Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other. Opening words. Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. Benjamin Franklin. Law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Transitional words. Few would guess that our prison population leaped from approximately 350,000 to 2.3 million in such a short period of time due to changes in laws and policies, not in changes in crime rates. Yet it has been changes in our laws, particularly the dramatic increase in the length of our prison sentences, that have been responsible for the growth of our prison system, not increases in crime. The words of Michelle Alexander from the book, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. Also, capitalism is the extraordinary belief that the nastiest of men, for the nastiest of motives, will somehow work for the benefit of all. John Maynard Keynes. Today's speaker is our loved Bill Breeden, a lifelong activist for peace and justice.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you all for being, it's good to be in a live church service for the first time I've been for a long time at Bloomington. As you may know, we have only about 5 or 6 people in the sanctuary, and I think the last time or so when I preached for you here, I was preaching from that sanctuary, which was a whole lot easier than preaching to my cell phone. But still, I've always considered preaching to be a two-way street, and I receive as much as I give, and so I've missed being here. And I really thank you so much for honoring social distancing and wearing masks. I'm going through some sciatica, which has been the craziest thing I've ever had in my life, and trying to avoid back surgery. I told somebody the other day, for the first time in my life, I feel like somebody else's age, because there ain't no way I'm this damn old, but I guess I am. I want to begin with something a little different, just because I want to. And this is a little book of Uncommon Prayer by Brian Doyle. And if you haven't read Brian Doyle, get his book. He's a Roman Catholic, and he has great respect for his faith, and there are many things that I disagree with him about, but he's one of the best writers he was one of the best writers on the planet, in my opinion, and died of a brain tumor. But I'll explain why I want to read this in a little bit. It's called A Prayer for Osama bin Laden. Yes, even him, the stupid, murderous slime. Because if I cannot pray grudgingly, ragingly, reluctantly, furiously, confusedly, complicatedly for his shattered soul, what is the point of praying at all? Yes, even him, the man who murdered thousands of innocents, among them Christian Hansen, age 3, Dana Falkenberg, age 3, David Brandhorst, age 3, and Julia McCourt, age 4. Among them, Dana's sister, Zoe, who I'm absolutely sure was huddling her little sister in her arms as the plane exploded. Even him, the man who had cackled in his cave when he heard of the success of his plans, who cackled at the roastings of small children, but there must have been a shard of holiness in that man, at least originally. Maybe there was some small shivering moment much later as he sat wrapped in his robes and out of Abbottabad, watching himself on the endless video loop, the narcissistic ass. When he felt a flicker of shame at what he had done, at how he had wasted his life, as how he has endangered the very faith he so adamantly insisted he was defended. I hope so. I pray. I pray that somehow, somewhere, sometime he wept at his copious sins. I pray that his dark energy was dissolved by the mercy and cleaned by the love and sent to redeem itself as the engines of insects and birds and tiny fish in clear pools. I pray that I am right and that there is a forgiveness bigger than any slime, and that somehow in ways I do not understand but believe in with all and not a little fear, that you have found a chamber in your heart even for him. Even him. And so, amen. I like Brian's attitude. Being a Universalist, I don't believe in hell. There are some things I do pray for. I pray for the soul of Donald Trump. I really do. I'd like for him to find his humanity. I'd like for him to find his compassion. I'd like for him to find empathy. And when he dies, if there is a heaven, I hope he goes to heaven. I think it would be fitting if God would assign him to clear the tables at the restaurants of heaven for about 10,000 years. And when he discovered what it meant to be a human being, then make him a waiter for another 10,000 years. And maybe he would become a full human being. I want to make it clear before I begin this morning that I try the best that I can to purge myself of hate, because hating hurts me. You know, it's a selfish thing. The more time I spend hating, the less time I can spend being happy. And so I encourage you to pray yourself free of hate. I noticed done some improvements out there. You got some nice little steps down out of the parking lot, and your sign out there. I like it that we welcome everybody. I want to be clear that when Obama was president, I specifically preached against his drone wars. I specifically called him to task for what I considered crimes against humanity. And so I do the same for Donald Trump. I offer you this morning to practice deep listening, as you will hear the words of persons who are or were incarcerated, one in his own voice if we make it work. And I really appreciate, John, you working with me. I appreciate what John does for us. Another through a letter, and lastly, a poem written by the sixth of 7 persons executed at the federal death house here in Terre Haute in the month of July, August, and September. We have 3 more executions coming in the coming months, as the self-proclaimed pro-lifers, Trump and Barr, seem to want to kill as many as possible for the end of their term, this term at least. One of the scheduled killing will be the first woman executed in over 53 years in the United States. Liz Montgomery is her name. She was convicted of a terrible crime, absolutely horrendous crime if you read about it, and I won't describe it this morning. You can look it up. But she was raped repeatedly by her stepfather from the age of 11 to 14. She was pimped out by her mother at the age of 14, sexually abused for years. And when you read about the crime for which she was convicted, no person of a right mind can say that she was sane. And yet we will execute her this month. I did not expect to be preaching twice this year about state-sanctioned murder. I have, as you know, preached at least one abolition sermon a year since 1996, when I met Helen Prejean, the author of Dead Man Walking. And I promised her that I would preach an abolition sermon every year. This year requires 2, I guess. I'm thankful to be a part of a blessed community of justice-seeking people. So deep listening. Practice it now as we hear the words of Phillip Stroud, hopefully, a former inmate on Indiana death row whose sentence was overturned and he plea bargained for 3 life sentences. His case exhibits possible prosecutorial misconduct, evidence tampering, and other legal issues that are now being investigated, and there is hope that he may someday walk free. Glenda and I have known him for more than 10 years, and we find him to be a wonderful human being who's transformed his life, who spent a few years in solitary confinement on death row. He now works as a mentor and peacekeeper in Pendleton State Penitentiary. He's done hospice work in the Wabash Valley Prison, and he's in Pendleton now, the oldest prison in Indiana. And you can't even begin to imagine the conditions in Pendleton until you visit there or try to talk to him on the phone live and listen to the cacophony. It is a madhouse. It's an absolutely, completely insane place to be. And somehow Phillip hangs on to his humanity. I don't know if I've told you the story about the death row and Mr. Rogers, but to tell you, just to give you an inkling of the men on death row. When Phillip went to death row, he was only 20 years old. And he was there for 3 years, and he says the guys on death row really saved his life. But he and Glenda were talking on the phone one day, and it was right after Mr. Rogers had died the month before, and the movie was coming out about Mr. Rogers and so forth. And Glenda said, Mr. Rogers was a good man. And Phillip said, no, Mr. Rogers wasn't a good man. Mr. Rogers was a great man. Said Mr. Rogers was the dad that we never had. He said, my mother and aunt, his father was in prison when he was a small child, and he said, my mother and aunt, when they got together and they would want to talk about things that they didn't want us to hear, they would sit us down in front of the television with newspapers on the floor and bring our breakfast in and set it on the newspapers. And we'd sit there and listen to Mr. Rogers. And he said, I remember one particular show, and in particular, where Mr. Rogers, the word of the day was family. And he said, can you say family? And he said, we sit on that floor, me and my cousins, saying family. Mr. Rogers was our father. When Mr. Rogers died, there's a tradition on death row in Indiana that anytime there's an execution, the guys on death row have what they call a word fast. They refuse to speak for 4 days. 4 days of silence. All the people on death row exercise a word fast. When Mr. Rogers died, they exercised a 4-day word fast. These are the men on death row. So deep listening. Let's try this, John. The words of Phillip Stroud.
I am your son. I am your childhood friend. Remember me? The one who kept over and over again. I'm that big nose, big lip little boy with the holes in his shoe. I am him. I am him. I am he. I am he. I am we. I am we. I am you. I am the child that my single mother raised. I am the child whose father died of AIDS. I am everything you tried to avoid. I am more than you can imagine. I am a revolutionary. I am Cora B. My grandma. I am going with the wind. I am your cousin. I am your nephew. I am the king of South Bend. I am the standard by which all other rappers are judged. I am a former death row prisoner. I am hated. I am loved. I am your uncle. I am the boyfriend that your mother has to hide in the closet or under the bed before the welfare people are allowed to come inside. I am brave. I am scared. I am innocent. I am locked up in prison for something that I didn't do, but I am doing the best that I can. I am a mentor. I am a teacher. I am a leader. I am a man. I am a lover. I am a fighter. I am almighty. I am a G. I am the crack baby with dirt on the bottom of his feet. I am the unarmed young black male laying dead in the streets. I am your father. I am your husband. I am your homie. I am your neighbor. I am healthy. I am alive. I am blessed and highly favored. I am down for the cause. I am real. I am true. I am him. I am he. I am we. I am you.
Thank you, John. Although that wasn't perfect, I hope you could hear most of it. The rap was part of a theatrical piece by Gladys Devane, using the words and songs of Phillip Stroud and Glenda Breeden, and women writing for a change in the Monroe County Jail. And it was produced by Resilience Theater Company. We hope to make the video of that piece, of that theater piece, available, because we did it in a small theater and it was completely sold out for 3 performances, and many people wanted to see it. So we're working on producing that video, and when we get it, we'll try to make it available to you all. It was a wonderful show, and it was wonderful for Glenda's works and Philip's words to come to life. And I got to act in it in very small parts. But then I'm not much of an actor, so we had some really wonderful actors in it as well. Chad Fulks is a man I've been visiting on federal death row for over 12 years now. I return to see him again next Saturday, and I'm excited about that. Me and the federal prison have had a disagreement over the last year, for over a year and a half, over a minor infraction that I mistake that I made, and I take responsibility for it, but they kind of overreacted. And then by the time it was about to be relieved and I could go back in, COVID struck, and so I haven't seen Chad for over 2 years, and next Saturday morning is going to be a great reunion. I will tell you that they've now determined that the COVID outbreak in the federal penitentiary was brought on by the hundreds of people they brought in for the executions this summer. So not only did we commit murder, but we also killed others in the prison with COVID because of those executions. And sometime this last year, I asked Chad if he would like to join our Bloomington church because he considers himself a Unitarian Universalist, and so we worked it out that when I can return to the Bloomington church and the board and so forth, together I will sign his name for him, but he is now an official member of our congregation, and we've printed up a beautiful certificate for him, and I will maybe read something in a few minutes. Well, in fact, that's what I'm going to do right now. This is from a letter from Chad. And I read these. I found it more difficult than I thought it would be. But we'll try it. Hello, I hope this finds you feeling better. It sucks hearing about your hurting your back, because I know how much pain that is. You got to remember that you're not as young as you once was. I really do hope it's nothing serious. I would tell you, I forgot how old I am, I guess, because the pain, this back situation began as an act of stupidity. And Mary Ann Macklin, a senior minister at Bloomington now, and I were playing golf for the first time in 6 years. Actually, second time. We got 2 rounds in before I did this. And I hit a huge drive. I can actually hit the ball a long way. But it got a little bit out of the fairway and crossed the ditch. And I should have just taken a 2-stroke penalty and played on, but I wanted to save 2 strokes, so I jumped the ditch. And then I had to jump back across the ditch, and I realized when I did that I'm not as young as I used to be. So it'll be a while before I play golf again. Well, yesterday made the 7th murder. This is written the day after the last execution at Terre. That is on Trump's hand. He's the only president in U.S. history to murder this many guys for many years. He's not the only one. Chad was mistaken about that. It's the other executions, the ones that exceeded how many Trump has, were during wartime. None of it makes any sense at all, Bill. I'm concerned that I'll be on this next list of execution dates, and I know this sounds crazy, but because I didn't have a fair trial, and because I also know the truth, I can't help but feel like letting them execute me gives them the final say, and that haunts me. You wouldn't believe how the executions have changed things around here, and how now the COs feel they can just treat us any way they want. The thing that they like to say now is, your day will soon be here, just count them down. This makes their day. I've been doing all I can to keep my head up and overcome their stupidity. I received my certificate of membership from the church, and I got to tell you, it made my day. I shed many tears as I looked at it. Thank you so much. He now has it hanging right beside his door and points it out to everyone who comes by that he is a member of our congregation. I wouldn't be the person I am today if it weren't for you and the Unitarians. You made me know that you were always at my side and I was not alone. Anytime something happens in my life, it's your advice and the tools you've given me that pops into my head. I've done my best to share these things with others, and it feels good. I've worked with Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof, if you remember, is a young man who killed people in the North Carolina church a few years ago. I've worked with Dylan Roof since he has been here, and I can see changes in his thoughts and beliefs. He does have a mental illness. I'd say it's schizophrenia. I know I spelled that wrong, but you can get it. He is really confused and needs guidance just like anyone else. People hate him here, and they don't even try to get to know him. Anyway, he's in the vent above. He's in the floor above, and what they do is they suck the water out of the pipes so they can talk through the pipes, the traps. They suck the water. He said he's in the vent above so we can talk, and I can see a change in him. Then he sends me his father's address, His father's only visited him once in 12 or 13 years. He can't find the strength to go to death row. He said, please be there for him if they set my date. And he sent his information. He might see death. He might not see death the same as me and you. I know there will be a new journey, and I'll have learned from all the mistakes that I've made in this life. Being a part of the family has given me so much strength during some of the darkest days of my life, and having my life and knowing my life is coming to an end, I find a great comfort in that. I often look at all the pictures you sent, the times we can actually smell the flowers or feel the new dewdrops around the lake early in the morning, or hear all the frogs and crickets and bugs singing their songs. I have that picture of your trek in Mexico, that beautiful rare bird hidden among the leaves. I stare at it often, and it calms me down. And then he says, well, best I close this up. Know you're always in my prayers and hearts. Thought for the day. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Those are the voices from death row. I recently received a call from some lawyers who serve people on death row, one lawyer in particular, and asked me if I could find a lawyer or a spiritual advisor for Orlando Hall, who will be executed on November 19th. Orlando's converted to Islam. He's a Muslim, and he was looking for a Sunni Muslim spiritual advisor. And they did find one who was a chaplain of the Indianapolis Police Department. But, you know, people in prison, it's like the chaplains at the prison. I mean, I don't condemn, I don't denigrate them. They're fine people. But the fact is, they support a system that's going to kill the people they're supposed to be ministering to. And so Chad always tells the chaplain when he won't listen to your sermons, and he said, why should I listen to your sermons? You support the death penalty. You support people are going to kill me. So when I found out that the only one they could find was a police chaplain, who I'm sure is a fine person, I felt like I'd try to find him someone else. And because we have a very close relationship with the mosque in Bloomington and celebrate Ramadan in our sanctuary with them every year, or have been doing that since 2001, right after 9/11, I have some contacts there, and I got a hold of a man named Yusuf Nur, one of the best acquaintances I've come in. He came to my lake. We sit and talk for 3.5 hours in the afternoon. I shared with him what it meant to be a spiritual advisor. I said, it will probably mean that you will be asked to be in the room with him when they kill him. I said, you need to know that. And you need to consider whether or not you're willing to do that. And I said to him, please know that I will not judge you if you can't. But that's what you're dealing with. He looked at me and he said, how can I say no? How can I say no? He needs someone. You know, the Cherokee people, we have a big deal in America about individual rights. Individual rights to pack heat anytime you want. Individual rights to get a bunch of pickup trucks and surround a campaign bus in the middle of a presidential campaign and intimidate people. Individual rights to carry your gun to a polling place. America needs to think a little more about this individual rights stuff. The Cherokee people, Cherokee Indian people, tribe, they didn't teach their children about individual rights. They taught their children about individual obligations. I don't worry too much about my individual rights. I mean, if they're oppressed sometimes, there's no question about that, and I worry about other people's individual rights. I worry about my obligation. And Yusuf Nur, this Muslim man, sat there and said, how could I say no? I'm asked to do this. So I received a note from him 2 days ago. He visited Orlando for the first time. He was coming back. He sent me a text. He said, I'm coming back from the prison after visiting Orlando. He said, I am learning so much. He is going through a spiritual experience like no one else. He asked me to have his last meal with him and to be there when he dies. I hope I have the strength to do it. I share that with you for this reason. There are a lot of guys on death row who have no spiritual advisor. I think there's now 69 people on death row in the United States, including Liz Montgomery, who's in Ohio, who's probably now in Indiana at the death house because that's the level she's at. But there's no women on death row officially, particularly. But many of them do not have spiritual advisors. And I've been asked to take on others that simply can't take on others. It's just too much. But we have another member of our church in Bloomington who I thought would be a pretty good match for a person on death row. And so I asked him if he would be willing to do it. And he's now been visiting a man on death row for a year. He said it's the best thing that ever happened to him. He's just loves it. He was, in fact, last Sunday when I was preaching was it last Sunday I preached? No, it was the Sunday before last I preached in Bloomington. And I had him do a video about his visits on death row for our social justice moment. And he was at that time sitting in death row during our service, although he had videoed it earlier. He was, during our service, sitting on death row. So I would say to you, if anybody would consider doing something like this, talk to me. Not everybody's cut out for it. I can't say that I recommend you if you come, but I'd like to talk to you about it if you're interested. It's a commitment that demands several hours a month, sometimes twice a month, and it's a commitment that you want to think about seriously. But you don't have to be a minister to do it, because this congregation can ordain you as a prison minister. That's what we did in our church in Bloomington. And this congregation could ordain a person to be a prison minister and take that on. I just throw that out and don't feel obligated to respond. It's an opportunity for those who feel like that they could do that. Kabir, the great Sufi, 14th century Sufi, illiterate prophet. The only thing we have of his are short songs. One of them says, translated says, "How great is our God, all is forgiven and no one is to blame." I change that, I say, "How great is our love, all is forgiven and no one is to blame." And I remind myself of that often. That is what I'm called to live for. These words from Leonard Cohen, my favorite singer-songwriter. "The birds, they sang at the break of day. Start again, I heard them say. Don't dwell on what has passed away or what is yet to be. Yes, the wars, they will be fought again. The holy dove, she will be caught again. Bought and sold and bought again. The dove is never free. Ring the bells that still can sing. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." By the way, that line is often quoted as Leonard Cohen's line, but he actually got it from Ralph Waldo Emerson. I found it in Emerson's journals. "We asked for signs, the signs were sent, the birth betrayed, the marriage spent, yea, the widowhood of every government. Signs for all to see. I can't run no more with that lawless crowd, while the killers in high places say their prayers out loud. But they've summoned up a thundercloud, and they're going to hear from me. Ring the bells that still can sing. Ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. They have summoned up a thundercloud, and they were going to hear from me." It's a question we should ask all of ourselves. Will they hear from me? Will they hear from us, the killers in high places, who love to say their prayers at National Prayer Day, who love to stand before churches with Bibles, who love to claim that the other side is against God, while they kill and say their prayers in high places? Finally, a prayer or a poem by William E. LaCroix. William E. LaCroix was the man who was executed on September 22nd in Terre, Haute, Indiana. I received this poem after William had died. It's called Timber. From this barred window, browning at the edge of a grass field, I behold those crooked pines, lines of sap oozing freely down the barkless spots on their trunks. Perhaps weeping, remembering a time in youth when they were green, orange bands bright like nooses strangled them, condemned them. No longer part of the living ecosystem, different somehow, infested, an eyesore, or carries a fungus, or death, rot, contagion. They are marked for death, quarantined, anxiously awaiting their executioners. Do they contemplate their fate? Are they conscious, struggling to breathe, senses of twitter, ever vigilant, listening for the thwack of looming axes, whose vibrations tremble every dry brown needle? And when they have joined the fallen, paralyzed and prone on the forest floor, lingering in death unbeknownst to others, to be hacked up in pieces and hauled off, do they scream sharply when heaped upon the pyre? Finally consumed, just ashes, dead and gone? Will there be something more for them than numbing oblivion, finality? Is there some place eternal, fertile, beside a tranquil river with lots of sunshine waiting to greet the roots of their spirit? Or can they focus only upon the culling, coming along today or tomorrow or the next, to all living things eventually, even the men here on death row, isolated, graying, dying like those pines? Perhaps they are resigned in knowing that much too soon, to even the mighty, something comes along to cut us all down, and maybe they dread only the arbitrary waiting. What can we do? We can listen, we can vote, we can act, we can speak, and we can minister. And this month, as we look through the end of this year, 3 more executions, we can speak, and we can pray, and we can at the very least stand in silence wherever we are during those hours of the execution ritual. The first man executed this year lay on the gurney for over 4 hours waiting to be killed. Over 4 hours strapped on a cross. The execution bed is just like a cross, strangely enough. Strapped on a cross for 4 hours waiting to be killed. I make no apologies for calling the administration to task, not only for the death on death row, but for the 238,000 people who've died of this COVID. My sister was the first one to die in Davis County, Indiana, because nobody down there took it seriously. They all thought it was a hoax. And in a nursing home of less than 75 residents, 16 died. They didn't know my sister had COVID until 2 days after she was dead. The number of people dying of this COVID right now are equal to about 4 plane crashes a day. If we had 4 planes falling out of the sky every day of every week of every month, there would be hell to pay. But that's the number we're looking at. And there are still people who believe it's a hoax. There are still people who think it's their individual right to not wear a mask. You know, it used to be individual rights had to do with voting, had to do with fair trials, had to do with the ability to walk down the street without getting accosted by police because of the color of your skin. That's what individual rights used to be about. Now it's about whether or not you got to wear a mask. How absurd and ridiculous we have become. But times change. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. We need to not worry about being perfect in our response. We need to not worry about being perfect. We worry about whether or not they will hear us. They will hear from me. They will hear from you. Because that is our responsibility as human beings. Blessed be
though I may speak with bravest fire, and have the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain, as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be given my love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit,